Bitcoin's hot phase is coming. Let's get into what that means. Less than 3 weeks to go until Bitcoin halving. Strange things are happening with Bitcoin right now. We've seen the third largest withdrawal of Bitcoins from Coinbase in its history. Where are these Bitcoins going? Most likely to cold wallets. When you see large inflows on an exchange, that's not a good signal. It means that investors are probably planning to sell those Bitcoins on the exchanges. But when you see large outflows of Bitcoins from the exchanges, that's a good sign. But there are other strange things happening. Look at a comparison of two Google searches, Bitcoin and artificial intelligence. Bitcoin is gaining momentum in Google's global search, and it's very interesting to watch. We know that there's going to be a lot of hype in the run-up to the halving, and that's going to drive a lot of people into this market and experience huge FOMO. We're going to see a lot of new investors. At this point, these are just early signs. The same early signs a search query about artificial intelligence once had. However, the next 3 weeks will be very telling. Now let's break down what's happened to the spot Bitcoin ETF so far. It's hard to believe that just 3 months ago, Grayscale had 640,000 Bitcoins, because now they only have 335,000 Bitcoins. In fact, since the ETF launched, they've sold 50% of their Bitcoins. In that time, BlackRock has bought 251,000 Bitcoins. They've picked up most of what Grayscale has been selling all this time. And although Bitcoin has overtaken silver in capitalization, it is still a tiny asset today. This is a great chart that shows how small Bitcoin really still is. Here you can see $500 trillion worth of residential real estate, $130 trillion worth of bonds, $110 trillion worth of stocks. All of this will be tokenized. That is what BlackRock's Larry Fink promises. Interestingly, the bond market is losing its investors as they see other alternatives, like the spot Bitcoin ETF, which means we're going to see a big move out of that $110 trillion in the future, right here into this tiny section called Bitcoin, which is only $1 trillion in size. Of course, it's not likely to happen tomorrow. It's not likely to happen a year from now. But in the future, I think it's inevitable. Gold, by the way, has a capitalization of $10 trillion, which is only 10 times more than Bitcoin. Bitcoin will overtake gold. That doesn't seem like such an unattainable goal. Take another look at this chart and tell me Bitcoin is a missed opportunity, that it's too late to buy it. Can Bitcoin reach the $100,000 pricing before halving? Let's take a look at some of the events that are happening. We're seeing huge amounts of Bitcoins being withdrawn from exchanges. The most interesting thing is this chart right here. We just saw the largest influx of stable coins ever. It's $1.4 billion in USDC. And the question is whether we'll see a major Bitcoin surge this time like we've seen before. All of this happened in 12 hours. The third largest outflow of Bitcoins from Coinbase, combined with the largest ever inflow of dollar stablecoins to the same Coinbase. That's just a crazy combination. And as Stock Monday Lizards writes, we're getting close to the hot phase of Bitcoin. Judging by this chart, we're just getting warmed up. It's going to be crazy, and history won't just repeat itself, it will surprise. Because this time, we have a huge flow of capital coming from spot Bitcoin ETFs. There's another interesting thing. I'm trying to put together all the little details to get an idea of what might happen in the near future. And so the next point is very interesting. What details do we have so far? Bitcoin outflows from Coinbase. Record inflows of stablecoins into the exchange. Bitcoin is going into a hot phase. ETFs buying like crazy. Grayscale has less than half of the Bitcoins left to sell. And here's an interesting message. If Bitcoin rises to $2,000 above $72,300, which it could easily do in just half an hour, $3.6 billion worth of positions will be liquidated. Okay, that's a small move out of $2,000 up, which won't even update the historic all-time high. But talk to old-timers in this market that you may have forgotten about, like Adam Back, a crypto specialist who's known for coming up with the proof-of-work concept that Bitcoin runs on. He says Bitcoin could set a new record high price as early as this week. Nobody would move $1.4 billion to Coinbase unless they had a plan. They definitely have a plan. And if that $1.4 billion plan comes to fruition, they could liquidate those short positions, leading to a short squeeze, which is what will help Bitcoin update ATH. Let's analyze all the data for the ETFs and see what happens in the long run. At this point, Bitcoin ETFs have been up for about 11 weeks, and only 2 weeks of those have been in the red. But we know why that happened. The first red week was because of FTX and their sales, and the second red week was because of Grayscale sales. If they weren't, all weeks would have been consistently green. Let's look at the global update on all ETFs. Here we can see that inflows into them are not record highs right now, as they were here for example. However, given the GBTC sales, which are declining, and the fact that inflows into the other Bitcoin ETFs are more or less flat, no wonder the Bitcoin price is still holding up so well. The cash flows into the ETFs are of course still positive, but not the largest we've seen, although they have been growing lately. In this chart, we see the red line representing cumulative money inflows and the green trend line. Despite the huge GBTC sales of over 300,000 Bitcoins already, this trend remains seriously rising. Here is that green trend. In addition, we also see a horizontal green line. It represents the average inflows into the Bitcoin ETF over the last 54 days. And as we can see, these inflows are still positive, which means that Bitcoin ETFs are not cooling off. There are now 9 new spot Bitcoin ETFs holding as much as 500,000 Bitcoins. That's a huge, mind-boggling amount of money. They're not slowing down even though Grayscale hasn't stopped selling. In fact, these sales are now among the lowest they've ever been. Here's something else to pay attention to. Take a close look at this chart, from which we realize that the number of Bitcoins that left the system yesterday is 2,584 coins. This is 3.5 times the daily Bitcoin issuance. That is, the number of coins mined by miners. In short, Bitcoin is becoming increasingly scarce. Thanks for watching.